Hello and welcome to Tacoma's Elder Care Channel. I'm your host Bob Michaels and we're at my law office here on the Floss Waterway in Tacoma, Washington. Today we're going to be speaking with two wonderful geriatric care nurses from a company called StoneBridge with an office here in Tacoma, Washington. We first have Janet Cups and Rebecca Higbee. And Rebecca, you own the company, is that right?
I do. I started StoneBridge. I've been working as a geriatric care manager for 7 years.
Great. Well, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody and tell us who you are and how they can locate you, and we'll take it from there.
All right, Janet.
Hi, I'm Janet Cups, and I'm a registered nurse, and I've been in this area for about 20 years. StoneBridge is located, our physical office is in Tacoma, but we go all over Pierce, King, and Thurston County. And as far as locating us, our phone number is 253-777-3762.
And I'm Rebecca Higbee. I've been, like I said, working as a geriatric care manager for 7 years. I am an RN as well. Worked in many different capacities as an RN and started seeing some gaps in the community where geriatric care management was introduced to me about 7 years ago, and felt a strong desire to fill the need in the community.
Great. So why don't you take a few minutes and just describe generally what do you do and who do you do it with?
Mm-hmm. So geriatric care management is common throughout the United States. We work to coordinate care for generally seniors. We do take care of people with multiple disabilities and comorbidities as well. Geriatric care management is traditionally performed by RNs or social workers. Our model is a very strong medical model consisting of RNs. We coordinate care for seniors to stay at home as long as possible, or to stay in their current environment as long as possible through managing their medical conditions.
Great. Well, why don't you walk us through kind of a typical client engagement, describing perhaps how that comes about. Do they call your office? Do you receive referrals from, say, a nursing home, or how does that all come about?
Mm-hmm. So we get referrals in a couple different ways, several different ways really. We belong to a national association, an accrediting association called the NAPGCM. We receive referrals from them, from our website, from attorneys such as yourselves, from hospital discharge planners, or healthcare providers in the community who are seeing gaps in care or have a concern about the well-being of seniors in the community.
Great. So, and the type of services, I take you have the first introduction, mm-hmm. and you find out, what this particular family or the need is of whoever it is you're working with, and then you create a care plan for them, or how does that work?
Right, it's very, very individual. It's for each person in their own environment, their own family, the resources they have as far as family that is part of their care, or if they've already had caregivers established, really identifying what the goals are for that senior and that family, really helping them to fulfill their dreams as they age, aging in place and living well. And creating that care plan, including their physician, their attorney, their financial planner, those resources in the community that they're going to use, and really helping them to execute that and live a wonderful life.
And how long does that process, if someone has an emergency and calls you on a Friday, can you handle that?
Oh yes. That's unfortunately more often than not, people get caught up in an emergent situation where they've been in the hospital for some crisis and then realize mom can't go home, dad needs to go somewhere else. The discharge planners do a great job of trying to prepare people, but you can be given a list of places that you can go temporarily, but what do you do with that? How do you know what they're like and what the quality is? Or is it really going to fit your lifestyle and that's where we come in, and we can help because we're out in those communities, out seeing those facilities frequently and touring and working with those communities to make sure that those care plans are kept in place.
Now I tossed you kind of the classic crisis planning, which I share with a lot of people I speak with. You know, my practice likewise is comprised of either crisis planning or pre-planning, and of course we all much prefer the pre-planning because it opens up more options and affords us the ability to take time to explore what exactly needs to be done and look at alternatives. But quite often we find ourselves having to make snap decisions quickly because we're thrust into that situation. So I encourage all of you to get with Janet and do this quickly, because if the farther lead time that you have, the more options that you have.
Absolutely.
Now, Rebecca, tell us how you're RN and how did you end up in Tacoma, Washington?
Yeah. Janet brought me out to Tacoma, Washington, or rather a colleague of Janet's. We actually came out here because of Janet. We have an agency in Boise, Idaho, and Janet's colleague really felt like she fit an excellent example of what a geriatric care manager is. Janet has a lot of resources, has a great deal of skill with our geriatric clients, and fits this role very nicely.
Thank you.
How do you, in terms of staffing, do you have a central office that people can come to, or do you meet people out at their place? How many people do you have working for you? I mean, kind of describe how everything systematically works.
Usually if the pre-planning is the best. So if I can meet with somebody at their attorney's office or while they're in the hospital, meeting them there in their home environment, if that's where they want to remain, we certainly want to meet people ahead of time to do some of that planning ahead of time. But I'll meet them anywhere. If they need to come into our office, I share a small space in Tacoma, but happy to meet people there, even at a coffee shop. I've been known to meet people at bowling alleys, so it's not a difficult situation. Anywhere works. And really, for right now, it's myself in this office, just seeing people generally, and we're planning to grow as we see different needs and different levels of care needed for people and different resources.
And geographically, do you service all of Tacoma, King County, Pierce County? How far do you extend?
I like to tell people Everett to Chehalis, and that because I've been up and down the I-5 corridor working with hospice, home health, home care, discharge planning, all throughout my career, and just enmeshed working those jobs together. And that's so as Rebecca was talking about my experience, I've been that person in the home. I've been that person who is identifying this care need for my own family members too. So for me, it's a place in the heart because it's something that I would have used had I known about it. But now that I know more about it, and through my experience, through my years here in Tacoma, I think I can really help people out there.
Why don't you address for us a little bit some of the philosophies that we take into planning? For example, people will often articulate to me that they never want to go into a nursing home or an assisted living facility, but realistically, they really can't stay home. The children live out of state or not in the area. If they have a spouse, perhaps they're just not strong enough to lift them or care for them. And we get into this conflict. Do you see that often, and how do you broach that with your clients?
So this is a really, really common issue that comes up with, I would say, 80% of our clients that we have. This issue is has a couple dynamics involved in it. The family, the decision maker, the senior who wants control over those decisions, right? And doesn't want to lose control of perhaps driving or their home or whatever is near and dear to their heart. And so looking at the safety as somebody living at home and coordinating that care to live at home is really what the geriatric care manager does. Also making those difficult recommendations regarding, okay, it's time to look at a different place to go. Here's your opportunities. Here's what planning can provide for you now as far as the type of facility you can move to.
And a large misconception by people is that this is a long-term commitment. And what folks need to know is that if you decide to move into an assisted living community or another community, that they're month to month. So if it's not the right fit, if it's not the right environment for you, you're not comfortable there, you can certainly move. It's a month, and it's not a sentence.
Yeah, great point. And it is so traumatic when it's kind of like taking the keys away from grandma, and how that can be traumatic also when a spouse or an elder has to go into a home and they leave this place that they've cherished for so long, and it takes a lot of nurturing. I work very hard with my clients to line them up with people like you as early as possible. That old saying, a friend in the family on a professional level is so important, because they might not have immediate need, but we see that coming on the horizons, and to the extent they can be comfortable with you and start understanding some of their options, the stress levels go way down. It's easier to work with their finances and their family, and things just go much smoother. And then also with the people we work with that may be real nervous about going into a facility, but you and I know that them remaining at home, just as a practical, gives us an opportunity to educate them about that. Show them that for example, their bathroom maybe would need to be overhauled, or they would need ramps installed, or they would need a live-in quarters for someone to spend the night, and all of a sudden the reality of those considerations come in and really change things. So.
The cost of 24-hour caregivers to be there, and the cost of caregivers in place at home versus what it costs to live in assisted living.
Yeah.
And also having us as a resource, you have that person to call, so that rather than taking that trip to the emergency room, you're calling the nurse and saying, this is what's going on, or daughter or son is calling and saying, hey, mom's telling me this, is this somebody could go check on her? Yes, I can go check on them. That's what we're here for, is to be that extra set of eyes and ears to help keep that person safe.
Right. And then we'll just wrap up with a quick little discussion about how we pay for all of this. Specifically with long-term care, we know there's only 3 ways to pay for that, and that's, of course, wealthy enough to pay out of your pocket, have some sort of long-term care insurance or some sort of insurance product that will cover long-term care, and then, of course, the other route is to be poor enough to qualify for Medicaid. There are some VA benefits, but by and large, those are the 3. I would imagine in your discussions with your clients, that issue comes up pretty quickly, because as you start outlining a care plan and you start putting person hours and energies into that, pretty soon the reality of how that's going to be paid for surfaces. How do you approach that with your clients, and how what's been their receptivity to that?
So our services specifically are paid for in one of 2 ways. Client pays for them privately, and another situation is long-term care insurance sometimes covers the cost of our services. A lot of times they'll pay to cover an assessment and the development of a care plan, and then the client is responsible for paying the monthly monitoring privately from there. The conversation that comes up frequently is the type of pre-planning and coordination that attorneys such as yourself do and coordinators such as us do saves people significant amounts of money down the road, significant amount of stress down the road. A lot of the coordinating services that we provide save specifically in regards to long-term care expenses on a monthly basis, and the pre-planning that we can put in place is leaps and bounds less expensive hourly from our rate, versus going out and kind of going through the emergency situation and paying everything out of pocket directly.
Sure. Well, why don't you tell everybody how to get a hold of you again, and then we'll wrap up.
Our phone number is 253-777-3762. We're in Tacoma, Washington, off of 74th and South Tacoma Way. You can also reach me at jcubs@stonebridgecare.com. We're also on the internet, stonebridgecare.com. And you can see our full site there and all of our offices.
Well, thank you, Rebecca and
Thank you.
Janet. I've worked with them, and they're just absolutely wonderful. They're a resource you should not hesitate to get a hold of, and again, start that pre-planning now. Well, again, thank you for tuning in. Again, I'm Bob Michaels, and we'll look forward to you next time.